Mr. Heath. Give the others a chance.
Be back, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson, can we ask you what it feels like to be back
here? We've got a job to do. We can only do that job as one people, and I'm going right in to start that job now.
Mr. Wilson, are you hopeful of the prospects? Mrs. Wilson, how do you feel about coming back to live at number 10? Sorry.
Much of a basic change on the ground since...
Could we just go and look at the Prime Minister as he leaves to enter his official car to go to see Her Majesty the Queen and to tender his resignation?
Prime Minister and his private secretary, Ken Stowe, going in their official car to Buckingham Palace to tender his resignation to the Queen. After that, he will be going to the Labour Party headquarters at Transport House. This is the last time that he will leave Downing Street as Prime Minister, and the first time he's been seen since 7 o'clock this morning when he arrived in a rush. There were only 2 people on the pavement here when he arrived at 7 o'clock this morning.
A wave that we've now become really quite well accustomed to throughout this campaign. Mr. Dennis Thatcher, her husband, standing behind.
It's been a wonderful campaign for you.
May I just thank you very much.
How do you feel at this moment?
Very excited, very aware of the responsibilities. Her Majesty, the Queen, has asked me to form a new administration, and I have accepted. It is, of course, the greatest honor that can come to any citizen in a democracy. I know full well the responsibilities that await me as I enter the door of number 10. And I'll strive unceasingly to try to fulfill the trust and confidence that the British people have placed in me and the things in which I believe. And I would just like to remember some words of St. Francis of Assisi, which I think are really just particularly apt at the moment. Where there is discord, may we bring harmony. Where there is error, may we bring truth. Where there is doubt, may we bring faith, and where there is despair, may we bring hope. And to all the British people, howsoever they voted, may I say this: now that the election is over, may we get together and strive to serve and strengthen the country of which we are so proud to be a part.
Prime Minister.
And finally, one last thing.
Yes.
in the words of Erin Eve, whom we had hoped to bring here with us, there is now work to be done.
Prime Minister, could I ask you if you would tell us what sort of administration you would like to have over the next 5 years?
Well, we shall be going inside and we shall be getting on with that as fast as we can.
Prime Minister?
And we'll hope to have some... Well, I think the first job is really to try to form a cabinet. We must get that done.
Prime Minister,
we can't really
how
get the
soon-
administration going until then. Well,
How soon do you think you'll be able to name your cabinet?
Well, certainly not today. I hope you'll
Perhaps
have some
tomorrow?
news by tomorrow evening. It's a very important thing. It's not a thing that should be suddenly rushed through. It's very important.
What will you be doing for the rest of today, Mrs.
I
Thatcher?
shall be here working.
Have you got any thoughts, Mrs. Thatcher, at this moment about Mrs. Pankhurst and your own mentor in political life, your own father?
Well, of course, I just owe almost everything to my own father. I really do. He brought me up to believe all the things that I do believe, and they're just the values on which I fought the election. And it's passionately interesting to me that the things which I learned in a small town, in a very modest home, are just the things which I believe have won the election. Gentlemen, you're very kind.
Prime Minister,
May
there's
I
a lot of
just go?
international
May I just
interest.
go?
Well, Mrs. Thatcher's now gone over to greet the crowd. Some very, very loud cheers, a lot of enthusiasm. It's all the police can do, really, to control some parts of the crowd and indeed even some parts of the press. It is a unique occasion. And there she was, indeed, quoting words of Erin Eve, who we were mentioning just before she came into Downing Street. And I think it was his assassination just before the campaign started that really has meant that the security has been as great as we've ever seen it for any national leader. I was saying in answer to Alistair Burnett's question that we have seen security around Mrs. Thatcher really very considerably strengthened in the last days of this campaign, where she's now doing an almost papal handshake, going down Downing Street, shaking every hand that she can possibly get hold of. There is great enthusiasm, a few boos at the back there, but then there are a few boos when Mr. Callaghan came out. There are some noisy voices shouting one or two things. There have been some elements shouting things about Ireland, but then Mr. Callaghan there had that too. It may well be that it's become a feature of day-to-day life for Prime Ministers when they're out in the open, as has this security. You can see really quite large numbers of plainclothes police behind Mrs. Thatcher, and she's now coming up towards us. And as she's coming towards the steps, and now she waves as Prime Minister. Once again, as she's done throughout this campaign, this is now the great photo call. And she's become really quite an expert at this. She spends really considerable minutes getting the right photograph. Well, she's done it now, and well, there she goes. She's going into number 10.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're leaving Downing Street for the last time after 11 and a half wonderful years, and we're very happy that we leave the United Kingdom in a very, very much better state than when we came here 11 and a half years ago. It's been a tremendous privilege to serve this country as Prime Minister. Wonderfully happy years, and I'm immensely grateful to the staff who've supported me so well. And may I also say a word of thanks to all the people who sent so many letters still arriving, and to all the flowers. Now it's time for a new chapter to open.
and I wish John Major all the luck in the world. He'll be splendidly served, and he has the makings of a great Prime Minister, which I'm sure he'll be in very short time. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
May I say firstly that I'm extremely grateful for the trust that my parliamentary colleagues have put in me and for the tremendous support that we've already had for so many people up and down the country. I hope in the next few years that I will be able to prove that that trust is justified. I'm grateful also for the enormous achievements that I inherit from Margaret Thatcher. I think history will record that she was a towering Prime Minister who left our country in a far better condition than she found it 11 years ago. I hope in the next few years to build on those achievements. I certainly hope in those years to build a society of opportunity. By that I mean an open society, a society in which what people fulfill will depend upon their talent, their application and their good fortune. What people achieve should depend particularly upon those things, and I hope increasingly in the future that that will be the case. I believe very firmly in the 1990s that we will have a decade of the most remarkable opportunities. We have soon the full opening and flowering of the single market in Europe. We have seen in the last few years the remarkable ending of the Cold War and the bringing together of nations in a fashion that no one would have imagined just a few years ago. We have in front of us the building and development of an entirely new Europe, a building and development in which this country will play a full and leading role. In the past week, we have seen openly and publicly the uniting of the Conservative Party. I would like to express again my thanks to all members of the party, and particularly Douglas Hurd and Michael Heseltine, for the enormous contributions they have made during the leadership contest to ensure that the party can remain united for the future. There's no ill feeling at the end of this contest. At the end of this week for the leadership of the Conservative Party, at the end of this week, I believe that there is a smile on the face of the party that will mean we're fully united for the future. I hope in the next few years that we will carry on with much of the work that has been done in the last few years. In particular, I want to see us build a country that is at ease with itself, a country that is confident, and a country that is prepared and willing to make the changes necessary to provide a better quality of life for all our citizens. I don't promise you that it will be easy, and I don't promise you that it will be quick, but I believe it is an immensely worthwhile job to do. Because it will be neither easy nor quick, if you will forgive me, I will go into number 10 straight away and make a start right now. Thank you very much indeed.
Significantly, one of the first things that the Prime Minister singled out was the need for Britain to play a full part in Europe, the cause of so much recent grief to the Conservative Party. And as he posed for the mass ranks of the world's press, giving them the pictures that will fill tomorrow's newspapers, the Prime Minister's staff were organising the procession of colleagues who'd come to hear what role he had sketched out for them in a major administration.
Good morning. I said most of what I wished to say when I had the opportunity of speaking last evening, but perhaps there are just one or two things that it would be appropriate to add this morning. It has been an immense privilege to serve as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom over the last 6.5 years. It's a privilege that comes to very few people, and it's a very precious privilege indeed. I hope as I leave Downing Street this morning that I can say with some accuracy that the country is in far better shape than it was when I entered Downing Street. The economy is booming, interest rates low, inflation low, unemployment falling, the growth pattern is well set, the health service is expanding, the education service is improving, and the crime statistics are falling. All of those, I think, are benevolent improvements in the interests of all the people of this country. I believe that the incoming government, to whom I repeat my warm congratulations upon their success, the incoming government will inherit the most benevolent set of economic statistics of any incoming government since before the First World War. I hope very much in the interest of the whole British nation that they're successful in retaining this economy in the future. If I may, I would like to clear up one area of speculation that I know has been abroad a little over the last few days. I have been a Member of Parliament for 18 years. I've been a member of the government for 14 years, a member of the Cabinet for 10 years, and Prime Minister since 1990. When the curtain falls, it's time to get off the stage, and that is what I propose to do. I shall therefore advise my parliamentary colleagues that I believe that it would be appropriate for them to consider the selection of a new leader of the Conservative Party to lead the party through opposition during the years that lie immediately ahead. This will necessarily take a little while to organise. Parliament must meet, and the members of Parliament must make their own consideration of this matter. Naturally, I shall remain at the service of the party during what I hope will be a reasonably brief interregnum. I'd just like, if I may, to add one final thought. During the 6.5 years that I have been in Downing Street, there have been innumerable personal kindnesses from huge numbers of people, many of whom I have never met and never heard from except by way of their individual kindness. I'd like to take this opportunity, if I may, of extending my thanks to them and the other millions of people in the British nation who've always given me their trust and the kindnesses to which I refer. I hope, if you will forgive me, I will say no more this morning. I believe, as you know, I have an appointment with Her Majesty the Queen in a few moments to tender my resignation so that a new government may then be formally appointed. I propose to see Her Majesty in just a few moments. The second reason I'll say no more now is that after that I hope that Norma and I will be able, with the children, to get to the Oval in time for lunch and for some cricket this afternoon. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.
And this new Labour government will govern in the interests of all our people, the whole of this nation. That I can promise you. When I became leader of the Labour Party some 3 years ago, I set a series of objectives for the Labour Party, and by and large I believe that we have achieved them. Today, we have set objectives for a new Labour government. A world-class education system in which education is not the privilege of the few, but the right of the many in our country. A new Labour government that remembers that it was a previous Labour government that formed and fashioned the welfare state and the National Health Service. It was our proudest creation. It shall be our job and our duty now to modernise it for a modern world, and that we will also do. We will work in partnership with business to create the dynamic economy, the competitive economy of the future, the one that can meet the challenges of an entirely new century and new age. And it will be a government that seeks to restore trust in politics in this country, that cleans it up, that decentralises it, that gives people hope once again that politics is and should be always about the service of the public. And it shall be a government too that gives this country strength and confidence in leadership, both at home and abroad, particularly in respect of Europe. It shall be a government rooted in strong values, the values of justice and progress and community, the values that have guided me all my political life, but a government ready with the courage to embrace the new ideas necessary to make those values live again for today's world. A government of practical measures in pursuit of noble causes. That is our objective for the people of Britain. Above all, we have secured a mandate to bring this nation together, to unite it, one Britain, one nation, in which our ambition for ourselves is matched by our sense of compassion and decency and duty towards other people. Simple values. For 18 long years, my party has been in opposition. It could only say it could not do. Today, we are charged with the deep responsibility of government. Today, enough of talking. It is time now to do. Thank you.
Enough of talking, high time to do. And before he does, he's joined by his children, Ewan, the boy in the blue shirt there, and Nicholas, and in the white cap, Catherine, his daughter. The three of them and Cherie, who've never been inside number 10 before, outside their new home, and no doubt the children will rush around once they get inside and say, which room do we have, and discover that there are barely enough rooms for each to have one. But they stand now posing for the photographers. They've been kept out of the limelight, the children. Tony Blair is very protective of his family life, has always been extremely diffident about talking about it, and when in interviews he's asked about it, he always says it's something I'd prefer not to say much about. He thinks, quite rightly, that protecting his children from this glare of publicity is the best way of allowing them to grow up with at least a half-normal life when their father has just become Prime Minister. They look slightly bewildered by it. And the door of number 10 opens behind him. Oh, and shuts again. They seem to have changed their mind about whether he should be allowed in or not. And obliging the photographers, the children move to one side. Shouts of "give her a big kiss." shouts of "give her a big hug," and the Prime Minister seems slightly uncertain about whether he should any longer obey the dictates of photographers. The advice is that he probably shouldn't, I think. They were about to, and they thought better of the full thing. Well, this is a stupendous moment for Tony Blair, aged 44, youngest Prime Minister for over a century, with his children. He goes over and greets some of his close family friends, supporters. 44 in 4 days' time, I think it is. So they go inside number 10 for the first time to be greeted by the staff, and as Lord Callaghan was describing, all lined up, the staff applauding. You can just see them applauding there as he comes in.
I have just accepted the invitation of Her Majesty the Queen to form a government. This will be a new government with new priorities, and I have been privileged to have been granted the great opportunity to serve my country. And at all times, I will be strong in purpose, steadfast in will, resolute in action, in the service of what matters to the British people, meeting the concerns and aspirations of our whole country. I grew up in the town that I now represent in Parliament. I went to the local school. I wouldn't be standing here without the opportunities that I received there. And I want the best of chances for everyone. That is my mission, that if we can fulfill the potential and realize the talents of all our people, then I am absolutely sure that Britain can be the great global success story of this century. As I have travelled round the country, and as I have listened and I've learnt from the British people. And as Prime Minister, I will continue to listen and learn from the British people. I've heard the need for change. Change in our NHS, change in our schools, change with affordable housing, change to build trust in government, change to protect and extend the British way of life. And this need for change cannot be met by the old politics. So I will reach out beyond narrow party interest. I will build a government that uses all the talents. I will invite men and women of goodwill to contribute their energies in a new spirit of public service to make our nation what it can be. And I am convinced that there is no weakness in Britain today that cannot be overcome by the strength of the British people. On this day, I remember words that have stayed with me since my childhood and which matter a great deal to me today. My school motto, I will try my utmost. This is my promise to all of the people of Britain. And now let the work of change begin. Thank you.
As you know, the general election left no party able to command a majority in the House of Commons. I said I would do all that I could to ensure a strong, stable and principled government was formed, able to tackle Britain's economic and political challenges effectively. My constitutional duty is to make sure that a government can be formed following last Thursday's general election. I've informed the Queen's private secretary that it's my intention to tender my resignation to the Queen. In the event that the Queen accepts, I shall advise her to invite the Leader of the Opposition to seek to form a government. I wish the next Prime Minister well as he makes the important choices for the future. Only those who have held the office of Prime Minister can understand the full weight of its responsibilities and its great capacity for good. I have been privileged to learn much about the very best in human nature and a fair amount too about its frailties, including my own. Above all, it was a privilege to serve, and yes, I loved the job, not for its prestige, its titles and its ceremony, which I do not love at all. No, I loved the job for its potential to make this country I love fairer, more tolerant, more green, more democratic, more prosperous and more just, truly a greater Britain. In the face of many challenges in a very few short years, challenges up to and including the global financial meltdown, I have always strived to serve, to do my best in the interests of Britain, its values and its people. And let me add one thing also. I will always admire the courage I have seen in our armed forces. And now that the political season is over, let me stress that having shaken their hands and looked into their eyes, our troops represent all that is best in our country, and I will never forget all those who have died in honour and whose families today live in grief. My resignation as leader of the Labour Party will take effect immediately, and in this hour I want to thank all my colleagues, ministers, members of Parliament, and I want to thank above all my staff who have been friends as well as brilliant servants of the country. Above all,
I want to thank Sarah for her unwavering support as well as her love, and for her own service to our country. I thank my sons, John and Fraser, for the love and joy they bring to our lives. And as I leave the second most important job I could ever hold, I cherish even more the first, as a husband and father. Thank you, and goodbye.
Her Majesty the Queen has asked me to form a new government, and I have accepted. Before I talk about that new government, let me say something about the one that has just passed. Compared with a decade ago, this country is more open at home and more compassionate abroad, and that is something we should all be grateful for. And on behalf of the whole country, I'd like to pay tribute to the outgoing Prime Minister for his long record of dedicated public service. In terms of the future, our country has a hung parliament where no party has an overall majority, and we have some deep and pressing problems: a huge deficit, deep social problems, and a political system in need of reform. For those reasons, I aim to form a proper and full coalition between the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. I believe that is the right way to provide this country with the strong, the stable, the good and decent government that I think we need so badly. Nick Clegg and I are both political leaders who want to put aside party differences and work hard for the common good and for the national interest. I believe that is the best way to get the strong government that we need, decisive government that we need today. I came into politics because I love this country. I think its best days still lie ahead, and I believe deeply in public service. And I think the service our country needs right now is to face up to our really big challenges, to confront our problems, to take difficult decisions, to lead people through those difficult decisions so that together we can reach better times ahead. One of the tasks that we clearly have is to rebuild trust in our political system. Yes, that's about cleaning up expenses. Yes, that's about reforming Parliament. And yes, it's about making sure people are in control and that the politicians are always their servants and never their masters. But I believe it's also something else. It's about being honest about what government can achieve. Real change is not what government can do on its own. Real change is when everyone pulls together, comes together, works together, when we all exercise our responsibilities to ourselves, to our families, to our communities, and to others. And I want to help try and build a more responsible society here in Britain, one where we don't just ask, what are my entitlements, but what are my responsibilities? One we don't ask what am I just owed, but more, what can I give? And a guide for that society that those who can should, and those who can't, we will always help. I want to make sure that my government always looks after the elderly, the frail, the poorest in our country. We must take everyone through us on some of the difficult decisions that we have ahead. Above all, it will be a government that is built on some clear values. Values of freedom, values of fairness, and values of responsibility. I want us to build an economy that rewards work. I want us to build a society with stronger families and stronger communities. And I want a political system that people can trust and look up to once again. This is going to be hard and difficult work. A coalition will throw up all sorts of challenges, but I believe together we can provide that strong and stable government that our country needs, based on those values, rebuilding family, rebuilding community, above all, rebuilding responsibility in our country. Those are the things I care about. Those are the things that this government will now start work on doing. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. When I first stood here in Downing Street on that evening in May 2010, I said we would confront our problems as a country and lead people through difficult decisions so that together we could reach better times. It's not been an easy journey, and of course we've not got every decision right. But I do believe that today our country is much stronger. Above all, it was about turning around the economy. And with the deficit cut by 2/3, 2.5 million more people in work, and 1 million more businesses, there can be no doubt that our economy is immeasurably stronger. Politicians like to talk about policies, but in the end, it is about people's lives. I think of the people doing jobs who were previously unemployed. I think of the businesses that were just ideas in someone's head and that today are making a go of it and providing people with livelihoods. I think of the hard-working families paying lower taxes and getting higher wages because of the first ever national living wage. I think of the children who are languishing in the care system and who've now been adopted by loving families. I think of the parents now able to send their children to good and outstanding schools, including free schools that simply didn't exist before. I think of over 200,000 young people who've taken part in National Citizen Service, the fastest growing youth programme of its kind in the world, something that again wasn't there 6 years ago. I think of the couples who've been able to get married who weren't allowed to in the past. And I think of the people on the other side of the world who wouldn't have had clean drinking water, the chance to go to school, or even be alive, were it not for our decision to keep our aid promises to the poorest people and the poorest countries in our world. And we've used our stronger economy to invest in our health service. When I walked in there, there were 18,000 people waiting over a year for their operation. Today, it's just 800. Too many, still too long, but our NHS is a national treasure and one whose staff perform miracles, as I've seen, every day. And we've strengthened our nation's defences with submarines, destroyers and frigates and soon aircraft carriers rolling out of our shipyards to keep our country safe in a dangerous world. These are the choices and the changes that we've made. And I want to thank everyone who's given so much support to me personally over these years. The incredible team at Number 10, the civil servants whose professionalism and impartiality is one of our country's greatest strengths, and my political advisors, some of whom have been with me since the day I stood for my party's leadership 11 years ago. I want to thank my children, Nancy, Elwyn and Florence, for whom Downing Street has been a lovely home over these last 6 years. They sometimes kick the red boxes full of work. Florence, you once climbed into one before a foreign trip and said, "Take me with you." Well, no more boxes. And above all, I want to thank Samantha, the love of my life. You have kept me vaguely sane, and as well as being an amazing wife, mother and businesswoman, you have done something every week in that building behind me to celebrate the best of voluntary service in our country. We will shortly be heading to Buckingham Palace to see Her Majesty the Queen, where I'll tender my resignation as Prime Minister, and I would advise Her Majesty to invite Theresa May to form a new administration. I'm delighted that for the second time in British history, the new Prime Minister will be a woman, and once again, a Conservative. I believe Theresa will provide strong and stable leadership in fulfilling the Conservative manifesto on which we were elected, and I wish her well in negotiating the best possible terms for Britain's exit from the European Union. Let me finish by saying this. The spirit of service is one of this country's most remarkable qualities. I've seen that service day in, day out in the incredible work of our armed forces, our intelligence agencies, and our police. It is something I always knew, but as Prime Minister, you see it so directly that it blows you away. And of course, writing those heartbreaking letters to the families who've lost loved ones is a poignant reminder of the profound scale of what these men and women give for us in the defense of our freedoms and our way of life. We must never forget that. In a different way, I've seen the same spirit of service in the amazing contributions of countless volunteers in communities up and down our country who are making our society bigger and stronger. And I'm proud that every day for the past 2 years, I've used the office of Prime Minister in a non-political way to recognise and thank almost 600 of them as points of light whose service can be an inspiration to us all. For me, politics has always been about public service in the national interest. It is simple to say, but often hard to do. But one of the things that sustains you in this job is the sense that, yes, our politics is full of argument and debate, and it can get quite heated. But no matter how difficult the decisions are, there's a great sense of British fair play, a quiet but prevailing sense that most people wish their Prime Minister well and want them to stick at it and get on with the job. So I want to take this moment to say thank you to all those who've written letters and emails offering me that support, people who I'll never get to meet and never get to thank personally. It has been the greatest honour of my life to serve our country as Prime Minister over these last 6 years, and to serve as leader of my party for almost 11 years. And as we leave for the last time, my only wish is continued success for this great country that I love so very much. Thank you.
I have just been to Buckingham Palace, where Her Majesty the Queen has asked me to form a new government, and I accepted. In David Cameron, I follow in the footsteps of a great modern Prime Minister. Under David's leadership, the government stabilised the economy, reduced the budget deficit, and helped more people into work than ever before. But David's true legacy is not about the economy, but about social justice. From the introduction of same-sex marriage to taking people on low wages out of income tax altogether, David Cameron has led a one-nation government, and it is in that spirit that I also plan to lead. Because not everybody knows this, but the full title of my party is the Conservative and Unionist Party. And that word unionist is very important to me. It means we believe in the union, the precious, precious bond between England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. But it means something else that is just as important. It means we believe in a union not just between the nations of the United Kingdom, but between all of our citizens, every one of us, whoever we are, and wherever we're from. That means fighting against the burning injustice that if you're born poor, you will die on average 9 years earlier than others. If you're black, you're treated more harshly by the criminal justice system than if you're white. If you're a white working class boy, you're less likely than anybody else in Britain to go to university. If you're at a state school, you're less likely to reach the top professions than if you're educated privately. If you're a woman, you will earn less than a man. If you suffer from mental health problems, there's not enough help to hand. If you're young, you'll find it harder than ever before to own your own home. But the mission to make Britain a country that works for everyone means more than fighting these injustices. If you're from an ordinary working class family, life is much harder than many people in Westminster realise. You have a job, but you don't always have job security. You have your own home, but you worry about paying the mortgage. You can just about manage, but you worry about the cost of living and getting your kids into a good school. If you're one of those families, if you're just managing, I want to address you directly. I know you're working around the clock. I know you're doing your best, and I know that sometimes life can be a struggle. The government I lead will be driven not by the interests of the privileged few, but by yours. We will do everything we can to give you more control over your lives. When we take the big calls, We'll think not of the powerful, but you. When we pass new laws, we'll listen not to the mighty, but to you. When it comes to taxes, we'll prioritise not the wealthy, but you. When it comes to opportunity, we won't entrench the advantages of the fortunate few. We will do everything we can to help anybody, whatever your background, to go as far as your talents will take you. We are living through an important moment in our country's history. Following the referendum, we face a time of great national change. And I know, because we're Great Britain, that we will rise to the challenge. As we leave the European Union, we will forge a bold, new, positive role for ourselves in the world. And we will make Britain a country that works not for a privileged few, but for every one of us. That will be the mission of the government I lead, and together we will build a better Britain. I'm about to go to Buckingham Palace to tender my resignation to Her Majesty the Queen and to advise her to ask Boris Johnson to form a new administration. I repeat my warm congratulations to Boris on winning the Conservative leadership election. I wish him and the government he will lead every good fortune in the months and years ahead. Their successes will be our country's successes, and I hope that they will be many. Their achievements will build on the work of nearly a decade of Conservative or Conservative-led government. During that time, our economy has been restored, our public services reformed, and our values defended on the world stage. Of course, much remains to be done. The immediate priority being to complete our exit from the European Union in a way that works for the whole United Kingdom. With success in that task can come a new beginning for our country, a national renewal that can move us beyond the current impasse into the bright future the British people deserve. To serve as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is the greatest honour. The heavy responsibilities are outweighed by the huge potential to serve your country. But you achieve nothing alone. And as I leave Downing Street, my final words are of sincere thanks. To my colleagues in government and parliament, to everyone in the building behind me and across the civil service, to the men and women of our armed forces and security services, and to the public servants in our schools, our NHS, our police and the other emergency services. All are inspired by the noble wish to serve their country in the national interest. I also want to thank the British people, everyone who loves our great country, who works hard for their family and wants their children and grandchildren to enjoy greater opportunity than they did. Thank you for putting your faith in me and giving me the chance to serve. This is a country of aspiration and opportunity. And I hope that every young girl who has seen a woman Prime Minister now knows for sure that there are no limits to what they can achieve. Finally, and most of all, I want to thank my husband, Philip, who's been my greatest supporter, and my closest companion.
That wasn't me.
I think the answer to that is I think not. I'm about to leave Downing Street, but I'm proud to continue as the Member of Parliament for Maidenhead. I will continue to do all I can to serve the national interest and play my part in making our United Kingdom a great country with a great future, a country that truly works for everyone.
Good afternoon. I have just been to see Her Majesty the Queen, who has invited me to form a government, and I have accepted. I pay tribute to the fortitude and patience of my predecessor and her deep sense of public service. But in spite of all her efforts, it has become clear that there are pessimists at home and abroad who think, after 3 years of indecision, that this country has become a prisoner to the old arguments of 2016. And in this home of democracy, we are incapable of honouring a democratic mandate. And so I am standing before you today to tell you, the British people, that those critics are wrong. The doubters, the doomsters, the gloomsters, they are going to get it wrong again. The people who bet against Britain are going to lose their shirts because we're going to restore trust in our democracy. And we're going to fulfil the repeated promises of Parliament to the people and come out of the EU on October the 31st, no ifs or buts. And we will do a new deal, a better deal, that will maximise the opportunities of Brexit while allowing us to develop a new and exciting partnership with the rest of Europe, based on free trade and mutual support. I have every confidence that in 99 days' time we will have cracked it. But you know what? We aren't going to wait 99 days, because the British people have had enough of waiting. The time has come to act, to take decisions, to give strong leadership and to change this country for the better. And though the Queen has just honoured me with this extraordinary office of state, my job is to serve you, the people. Because if there is one point we politicians need to remember, it is that the people are our bosses. My job is to make your streets safer. And we're going to go in with another 20,000 police on the streets, and we start recruiting forthwith. My job is to make sure you don't have to wait 3 weeks to see your GP. And we start work this week with 20 new hospital upgrades and ensuring that the money for the NHS really does get to the front line. My job is to protect you or your parents or grandparents from the fear of having to sell your home to pay for the costs of care. And so I am announcing now on the steps of Downing Street that we will fix the crisis in social care once and for all with a clear plan we have prepared to give every older person the dignity and security they deserve. My job is to make sure your kids get a superb education wherever they are in the country, and that's why we have already announced that we're going to level up per pupil funding in primary and secondary schools. And that is the work that begins immediately behind that black door. And though I am today building a great team of men and women, I will take personal responsibility for the change I want to see. Never mind the backstop, the buck stops here. And I will tell you something else about my job. It is to be Prime Minister of the whole United Kingdom. And that means uniting our country, answering at last the plea of the forgotten people and the left behind towns by physically and literally renewing the ties that bind us together, so that with safer streets and better education and fantastic new road and rail infrastructure and full fibre broadband, we level up across Britain with higher wages, a higher living wage, higher productivity. We close the opportunity gap, giving millions of young people the chance to own their own homes and giving business the confidence to invest across the UK. Because it is time we unleashed the productive power, not just of London and the South East, but of every corner of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. The awesome foursome that are incarnated in that red, white, and blue flag, who together are so much more than the sum of their parts, and whose brand and political personality is admired and even loved around the world for our inventiveness, for our humour, for our universities, our scientists, our armed forces, our diplomacy, for the equalities on which we insist, whether race or gender or LGBT, or the right of every girl in the world to 12 years of quality education, for the values we stand for around the world. Everyone knows the values that flag represents. It stands for freedom and free speech and habeas corpus and the rule of law, and above all it stands for democracy. And that is why we will come out of the EU on October the 31st, because in the end, Brexit was a fundamental decision by the British people, that they wanted their laws made by people that they can elect and they can remove from office. And we must now respect that decision and create a new partnership with our European friends, as warm, as close, and as affectionate as possible. And the first step is to repeat unequivocally our guarantee to the 3.2 million EU nationals now living and working among us. And I say directly to you, thank you. Thank you for your contribution to our society. Thank you for your patience. And I can assure you that under this government, you will have the absolute certainty of the right to live and remain. And I say next to our friends in Ireland and in Brussels and around the EU, I am convinced we can do a deal without checks at the Irish border, because we refuse under any circumstances to have such checks, and yet without that anti-democratic backstop. And it is, of course, vital at the same time that we prepare for the remote possibility that Brussels refuses any further to negotiate. And we are forced to come out with no deal, not because we want that outcome, of course not, but because it is only common sense to prepare. And let me stress that there is a vital sense in which those preparations cannot be wasted, and that is because under any circumstances we will need to get ready at some point in the near future to come out of the EU customs union and out of regulatory control, fully determined at last to take advantage of Brexit, because that is the course on which this country is now set. With high hearts and growing confidence, we will now accelerate the work of getting ready, and the ports will be ready, and the banks will be ready, and the factories will be ready, and business will be ready, and the hospitals will be ready, and our amazing food and farming sector will be ready and waiting to continue selling ever more, not just here but around the world. And don't forget that in the event of a no-deal outcome, we will have that extra lubrication of the £39 billion. And whatever deal we do, we will prepare this autumn for an economic package to boost British business and to lengthen this country's lead as the #1 destination in this continent for overseas investment. And to all those who continue to prophesy disaster, I say yes, there will be difficulties, though I believe that with energy and application they will be far less serious than some have claimed. But if there is one thing that has really sapped the confidence of business over the last 3 years, it is not the decisions we have taken, it is our refusal to take decisions. And to those who say we cannot be ready, I say, do not underestimate this country. Do not underestimate our powers of organisation and our determination, because we know the enormous strengths of this economy in life sciences, in tech, in academia, in music, the arts, culture, financial services. It is here in Britain that we are using gene therapy for the first time to treat the most common form of blindness. Here in Britain that we are leading the world in battery technology that will help cut CO2 and tackle climate change and produce green jobs for the next generation. And as we prepare for a post-Brexit future, it is time we look not at the risks but at the opportunities that are upon us. So let us begin work now to create free ports that will drive growth and thousands of high-skilled jobs in left-behind areas. Let's start now to liberate the UK's extraordinary bioscience sector from anti-genetic modification rules. And let's develop the blight-resistant crops that will feed the world. Let's get going now on our own position, navigation, and timing satellite and Earth observation systems. UK assets orbiting in space with all the long-term strategic and commercial benefits for this country. Let's change the tax rules to provide extra incentives to invest in capital and research. And let's promote the welfare of animals that has always been so close to the hearts of the British people. And yes, let's start now on those free trade deals, because it is free trade that has done more than anything else to lift billions out of poverty. All this and more we can do now and only now, at this extraordinary moment in our history. And after 3 years of unfounded self-doubt, it is time to change the record, to recover our natural and historic role as an enterprising, outward-looking and truly global Britain, generous in temper and engaged with the world. No one in the last few centuries has succeeded in betting against the pluck and nerve and ambition of this country. They will not succeed today. We, in this government, will work flat out to give this country the leadership it deserves. And that work begins now. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, this is it, folks. Thank you, everybody, for coming out so early this morning. In only a couple of hours, I will be in Balmoral to see Her Majesty the Queen. And the torch will finally be passed to a new Conservative leader. The baton will be handed over in what has unexpectedly turned out to be a relay race. They changed the rules halfway through, but never mind that now. And through that lacquered black door, a new Prime Minister will shortly go to meet a fantastic group of public servants. The people who got Brexit done, the people who delivered the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, and never forget, 70% of the entire population got a dose within 6 months, faster than any comparable country. That is government for you. That's this Conservative government. People who organised those prompt early supplies of weapons to the heroic Ukrainian armed forces, an action that may very well have helped change the course of the biggest European war for 80 years. And because of the speed and urgency of what you did, everybody involved in this government, to get this economy moving again from July last year, in spite of all the opposition, all the naysayers, we have and will continue to have that economic strength to give people the cash they need to get through this energy crisis that has been caused by Putin's vicious war. And I know that Liz, Truss, and this compassionate Conservative government will do everything we can to get people through this crisis, and this country will endure it, and we will win. And if Putin thinks that he can succeed by blackmailing or bullying the British people, then he is utterly deluded. And the reason we will have those funds now and in the future is because we Conservatives understand the vital symmetry between government action and free market, capitalist, private sector enterprise. We're delivering on those huge manifesto commitments, making streets safer, neighbourhood crime down 38% in the last 3 years, 13,790 more police on the streets, building more hospitals, and yes, we will have 50,000 more nurses by the end of the decade, and 40 more hospitals by the end of 50,000 nurses by the end of this Parliament, I should say. 40 new hospitals by the end of the decade. Putting record funding into our schools and into teachers' pay, giving everybody over 18 a lifetime skills guarantee so they can keep upskilling throughout their lives. 3 new high-speed rail lines, 3, including Northern Powerhouse Rail. Colossal road programs from the Pennines to Cornwall. The rollout of gigabit broadband up over the last 3 years, I am proud to say, since you were kind enough to elect me, from 7% of our country's premises having gigabit broadband to 70% today. And we are, of course, providing the short and the long-term solutions for our energy needs, and not just using more of our own domestic hydrocarbons, but going up by 2030 to 50 gigawatts of wind power. That is half this country's electricity needs from offshore wind alone. A new nuclear reactor every year. And looking at what is happening in this country, the changes that are taking place, that is why private sector investment is flooding in. More private sector, more venture capital investment than China itself. More billion-pound tech companies sprouting here in the UK than in France, Germany and Israel combined. And as a result, unemployment, as I leave office, unemployment down to lows not seen since I was about 10 years old and bouncing around on a space hopper, my friends. And on the subject of bouncing around in future careers, let me say that I am now like one of those booster rockets that has fulfilled its function, and I will now be gently re-entering the atmosphere and splashing down invisibly in some remote and obscure corner of the Pacific. And like Cincinnatus, I am returning to my plough. And I will be offering this government nothing but the most fervent support. I'll tell you why. This is a tough time for the economy. This is a tough time for families up and down the country. We can and we will get through it, and we will come out stronger the other side. But I say to my fellow Conservatives, it's time for politics to be over, folks. It's time for us all to get behind Liz Truss and her team and her programme and deliver for the people of this country. Because that is what the people of this country want, that's what they need, and that's what they deserve. I'm proud to have discharged the promises I made to my party when you were kind enough to choose me. Winning the biggest majority since 1987, the biggest share of the vote since 1979. Delivering Brexit, delivering our manifesto commitments, including, by the way, including social care, reforming social care, helping people up and down the country, ensuring that Britain is once again standing tall in the world. Speaking with clarity and authority from Ukraine to the AUKUS pact with America and Australia. Because we are one whole and entire united kingdom whose diplomats, security services and armed forces are so globally admired. And by the way, as I leave, I believe our union is so strong that those who want to break it up, they'll keep trying, but they will never, ever succeed. Thank you to everybody behind me in this building. Thank you to all of you in government. Thank you to everybody who's helped look after me and my family over the last 3 years, including Dylan, the dog. And I just say to my party, if Dylan and Larry can put behind them their occasional difficulties, then so can the Conservative Party. Above all, thanks to you, the British people, to the voters for giving me the chance to serve, all of you who worked so tirelessly together to beat COVID, to put us where we are today. Together, we have laid foundations that will stand the test of time, whether by taking back control of our laws or putting in vital new infrastructure. Great, solid masonry on which we will continue to build together, paving the path of prosperity now and for future generations. And I will be supporting Liz Truss and the new government every step of the way. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I have just accepted Her Majesty the Queen's kind invitation to form a new government. Let me pay tribute to my predecessor. Boris Johnson delivered Brexit, the COVID vaccine, and stood up to Russian aggression. History will see him as a hugely consequential Prime Minister. I'm honoured to take on this responsibility at a vital time for our country. What makes the United Kingdom great is our fundamental belief in freedom, in enterprise, and in fair play. Our people have shown grit, courage, and determination time and time again. We now face severe global headwinds caused by Russia's appalling war in Ukraine and the aftermath of COVID. Now is the time to tackle the issues that are holding Britain back. We need to build roads, homes, and broadband faster. We need more investment and great jobs in every town and city across our country. We need to reduce the burden on families and help people get on in life. I know that we have what it takes to tackle those challenges. Of course, it won't be easy, but we can do it. We will transform Britain into an aspiration nation with high-paying jobs, safe streets, and where everyone everywhere has the opportunities they deserve. I will take action this day and action every day to make it happen. United with our allies, we will stand up for freedom and democracy around the world, recognising that we can't have security at home without having security abroad. As Prime Minister, I will pursue 3 early priorities. Firstly, I will get Britain working again. I have a bold plan to grow the economy through tax cuts and reform. I will cut taxes to reward hard work and boost business-led growth and investment. I will drive reform in my mission to get the United Kingdom working, building and growing. We'll get spades in the ground to make sure people are not facing unaffordable energy bills, and we will also make sure that we are building hospitals, schools, roads and broadband. Secondly, I will deal hands-on with the energy crisis caused by Putin's war. I will take action this week to deal with energy bills and to secure our future energy supply. Thirdly, I will make sure that people can get doctor's appointments and the NHS services they need. We will put our health service on a firm footing. By delivering on the economy, on energy and on the NHS, we will put our nation on the path to long-term success. We shouldn't be daunted by the challenges we face. As strong as the storm may be, I know that the British people are stronger. Our country was built by people who get things done. We have huge reserves of talent, of energy and determination. I am confident that together we can ride out the storm. We can rebuild our economy, and we can become the modern, brilliant Britain that I know we can be. This is our vital mission to ensure opportunity and prosperity for all people and future generations. I am determined to deliver. Thank you. In just a short period, this government has acted urgently and decisively on the side of hard-working families and businesses. We reversed the national insurance increase. We helped millions of households with their energy bills and helped thousands of businesses avoid bankruptcy. We are taking back our energy independence so we are never again beholden to global market fluctuations or malign foreign powers. From my time as Prime Minister, I am more convinced than ever that we need to be bold and confront the challenges that we face. As the Roman philosopher Seneca wrote, it's not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It's because we do not dare that they are difficult. We simply cannot afford to be a low-growth country where the government takes up an increasing share of our national wealth and where there are huge divides between different parts of our country. We need to take advantage of our Brexit freedoms to do things differently. This means delivering more freedom for our own citizens and restoring power to democratic institutions. It means lower taxes so people can keep more of the money that they earn. And it means delivering growth that will lead to more job security, higher wages, and greater opportunities for our children and grandchildren. Democracies must be able to deliver for their own people. We must be able to outcompete autocratic regimes where power lies in the hands of a few. And now more than ever, we must support Ukraine in their brave fight against Putin's aggression. Ukraine must prevail, and we must continue to strengthen our nation's defences. That's what I have been striving to achieve, and I wish Rishi Sunak every success for the good of our country. I want to thank Hugh, Francis, Liberty, my family and friends, and all the team at Number 10 for their love, friendship and support. I also want to thank my protection team. I look forward to spending more time in my constituency and continuing to serve South West Norfolk from the backbenches. Our country continues to battle through a storm. But I believe in Britain. I believe in the British people, and I know that brighter days lie ahead. Thank you.
Good morning. I've just been to Buckingham Palace and accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government in his name. It is only right to explain why I am standing here as your new Prime Minister. Right now, our country is facing a profound economic crisis. The aftermath of COVID still lingers. Putin's war in Ukraine has destabilized energy markets and supply chains the world over. I want to pay tribute to my predecessor, Liz Truss. She was not wrong to want to improve growth in this country. It is a noble aim. And I admired her restlessness to create change. But some mistakes were made. Not born of ill will or bad intentions. Quite the opposite, in fact. But mistakes nonetheless. And I have been elected as leader of my party and your Prime Minister, in part, to fix them. And that work begins immediately. I will place economic stability and confidence at the heart of this government's agenda. This will mean difficult decisions to come. But you saw me during COVID doing everything I could to protect people and businesses with schemes like furlough. There are always limits, more so now than ever. But I promise you this, I will bring that same compassion to the challenges we face today. The government I lead will not leave the next generation, your children and grandchildren, with a debt to settle that we were too weak to pay ourselves. I will unite our country, not with words, but with action. I will work day in and day out to deliver for you. This government will have integrity, professionalism, and accountability at every level. Trust is earned, and I will earn yours. I will always be grateful to Boris Johnson for his incredible achievements as Prime Minister, and I treasure his warmth and generosity of spirit. And I know he would agree that the mandate my party earned in 2019 is not the sole property of any one individual. It is a mandate that belongs to and unites all of us. And the heart of that mandate is our manifesto. I will deliver on its promise: a stronger NHS, better schools, safer streets, control of our borders, protecting our environment, supporting our armed forces, levelling up, and building an economy that embraces the opportunities of Brexit, where businesses invest, innovate, and create jobs. I understand how difficult this moment is. After the billions of pounds it cost us to combat COVID, after all the dislocation that caused, in the midst of a terrible war that must be seen successfully to its conclusions, I fully appreciate how hard things are. And I understand too that I have work to do to restore trust after all that has happened. All I can say is that I am not daunted. I know the high office I have accepted, and I hope to live up to its demands. But when the opportunity to serve comes along, you cannot question the moment, only your willingness. So I stand here before you, ready to lead our country into the future, to put your needs above politics, to reach out and build a government that represents the very best traditions of my party. Together, we can achieve incredible things. We will create a future worthy of the sacrifices so many have made, and fill tomorrow and every day thereafter with hope. Thank you.
Good morning. I will shortly be seeing His Majesty the King to offer my resignation as Prime Minister. To the country, I would like to say first and foremost, I am sorry. I have given this job my all, but you have sent a clear signal that the government of the United Kingdom must change, and yours is the only judgment that matters. I have heard your anger, your disappointment, and I take responsibility for this loss. To all the Conservative candidates and campaigners who worked tirelessly but without success, I am sorry that we could not deliver what your efforts deserved. It pains me to think how many good colleagues who contributed so much to their communities and our country will now no longer sit in the House of Commons. I thank them for their hard work and their service. Following this result, I will step down as party leader, not immediately, but once the formal arrangements for selecting my successor are in place. It is important that after 14 years in government, the Conservative Party rebuilds, but also that it takes up its crucial role in opposition professionally and effectively. When I first stood here as your Prime Minister, I told you the most important task I had was to return stability to our economy. Inflation is back to target, mortgage rates are falling, and growth has returned. We have enhanced our standing in the world, rebuilding relations with allies, leading global efforts to support Ukraine, and becoming the home of a new generation of transformative technologies. And our United Kingdom is stronger too, with the Windsor Framework, devolution restored in Northern Ireland, and our union strengthened. I'm proud of those achievements. I believe this country is safer, stronger, and more secure than it was 20 months ago. And it is more prosperous, fairer, and resilient than it was in 2010. Whilst he has been my political opponent, Sir Keir Starmer will shortly become our Prime Minister. In this job, his successes will be all our successors, and I wish him and his family well. Whatever our disagreements in this campaign, he is a decent, public-spirited man who I respect. He and his family deserve the very best of our understanding as they make the huge transition to their new lives behind this door, and as he grapples with this most demanding of jobs in an increasingly unstable world. I'd like to thank my colleagues, my cabinet, the civil service, especially here in Downing Street, the team at Chequers, my staff, CCHQ, but most of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to my wife Akshata and our beautiful daughters. I can never thank them enough for the sacrifices they have made so that I might serve our country. One of the most remarkable things about Britain is just how unremarkable it is that 2 generations after my grandparents came here with little, I could become Prime Minister, and that I could watch my 2 young daughters light Diwali candles on the steps in Downing Street. We must hold true to that idea of who we are, that vision of kindness, decency, and tolerance that has always been the British way. This is a difficult day, at the end of a number of difficult days. But I leave this job honoured to have been your Prime Minister. This is the best country in the world, and it is thanks entirely to you, the British people, the true source of all our achievements, our strengths, and our greatness. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I have just returned from Buckingham Palace, where I accepted an invitation from His Majesty the King to form the next government of this great nation. I want to thank the outgoing Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. His achievement as the first British Asian Prime Minister of our country, the extra effort that will have required, should not be underestimated by anyone. And we pay tribute to that today. And we also recognise the dedication and hard work he brought to his leadership. But now our country has voted decisively for change, for national renewal, and a return of politics to public service. When the gap between the sacrifices made by people and the service they receive from politicians grows this big, it leads to a weariness in the heart of a nation, a draining away of the hope, the spirit, the belief in a better future, that we need to move forward together. Now, this wound, this lack of trust, can only be healed by actions, not words. I know that. But we can make a start today with the simple acknowledgement that public service is a privilege and that your government should treat every single person in this country with respect. If you voted Labour yesterday, we will carry the responsibility of your trust as we rebuild our country. But whether you voted Labour or not, in fact, especially if you did not, I say to you directly, my government will serve you. Politics can be a force for good. We will show that. We've changed the Labour Party, returned it to service, and that is how we will govern. Country first, party second. Yet, if I'm honest, service is merely a precondition of hope, and it is surely clear to everyone that our country needs a bigger reset, a rediscovery of who we are, because no matter how fierce the storms of history, one of the great strengths of this nation has always been our ability to navigate a way to calmer waters. And yet this depends upon politicians, particularly those who stand for stability and moderation, as I do, recognising when we must change course. For too long now, we've turned a blind eye as millions slid into greater insecurity. Nurses, builders, drivers, carers, people doing the right thing, working harder every day, recognised at moments like this before, yet as soon as the cameras stop rolling, their lives are ignored. I want to say very clearly to those people, not this time. Changing a country is not like flicking a switch. The world is now a more volatile place. This will take a while. But have no doubt that the work of change begins immediately. Have no doubt that we will rebuild Britain with wealth created in every community, our NHS back on its feet facing the future, secure borders, safer streets, everyone treated with dignity and respect at work, the opportunity of clean British power cutting your energy bills for good. And brick by brick, we will rebuild the infrastructure of opportunity, the world-class schools and colleges, the affordable homes that I know are the ingredients of hope for working people, the security that working-class families like mine can build their lives around. Because if I asked you now whether you believe that Britain will be better for your children, I know too many of you would say no. And so my government will fight every day until you believe again. From now on, you have a government unburdened by doctrine, guided only by the determination to serve your interest, to defy, quietly, those who have written our country off. You have given us a clear mandate, and we will use it to deliver change, to restore service and respect to politics, end the era of noisy performance, tread more lightly on your lives, and unite our country. 4 nations standing together again, facing down, as we have so often in our past, the challenges of an insecure world, committed to a calm and patient rebuilding. So, with respect and humility, I invite you all to join this government of service in the mission of national renewal. Our work is urgent, and we begin it today. Thank you very much.